I just let one last person in, and I will watch the waiting room if anybody else joins us, but we're at 1:30 and I think we could go ahead and get started, Eduardo.
Wonderful. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Eduardo Ortiz, and I work at the Institute for Disability Research Policy and Practice, IDRPP, here at Utah State University. And together with my colleague Mindy Dokos, we would like to welcome all of you to another community of practice organized by the Multicultural Disability Network and Training MultiNet project. This project seeks better understanding of the challenges faced by people with disabilities from multicultural background, the intersectionality of disability and diverse multicultural factors such as race and ethnicity, age, geography, including rural, frontier, or remote settings, gender and gender identification, socioeconomic status, including health literacy and family structures, among other cultural elements, that creates a complex context that needs expanded conversation and learning opportunities such as this community of practice activity. As part of MultiNet, we have developed other products. I invite you to look at the link placed in the chat. So Mindy probably is going to put that link. Thank you. And today we have the privilege to have Libby Oseguera from the Utah Developmental Disability Council, who will present about engaging diverse communities to support families experiencing developmental and intellectual disabilities. Libby Oseguera has worked with the public for over 20 years in adaptive recreation, job coaching, and many years of advocacy programming, policy work, and active engagement in system changes for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. She received a Bachelor of Science Recreation at the University of Nevada, Las Vegas, followed by a Master of Public Administration from California State University. She currently serves as the Executive Director of the Utah Developmental Disabilities Council and is dedicated to supporting and empowering people with intellectual and developmental disabilities to achieve inclusive, meaningful, and self-determined lives in their communities. I would like to remind you some ground rules. We would appreciate if you introduce briefly in the chat, writing your name, location, role, and organization that you represent. Also, remember that this community of practice group is here to discuss, not to debate or argue. Also, any discussion should be focused and avoid side-deviated conversations. Keep an open mind and be open to learning something new. Avoid making assumptions. Be respectful of others because listening is as important as talking as well. Ask questions to gain understanding and clarity. And please keep your mic mute during the presentation. And I also remind you that this community of practice is recorded. Libby, the stage is yours. And at your command, I can put the PowerPoint.
Thank you, Eduardo. Yes, please bring up the slides. Okay. While we're waiting for Eduardo, I appreciate his assistance in sharing my slides today. I just want to thank you for joining us today. I am honored and excited to be here with you and hopeful to learn from you as well as we walk through some of the work that we are doing at the DD Council to engage diverse communities. I'll start by introducing our organization. Eduardo, if you could please move to the next slide. The Utah Developmental Disability Council, in short, is an advocacy organization for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities, as well as their family members. And we are a state entity that is housed within the Utah Department of Health and Human Services. However, we receive 100% of our funding from the federal government, specifically the Administration for Community Living. And we are authorized by the Developmental Disabilities Assistance and Bill of Rights Act, which I'm going to call the DD Act from now on if we mention it further throughout this presentation. We are a governing board who is made up of governor-appointed board members, and the board works together to create a state plan that is defined by the DD Act. Next slide, please. The council's mission is to advocate, build capacity, and encourage different systemic change efforts that support people with disabilities and their families so that they're able to fully and independently participate in our communities. Every 5 years, the council does a statewide analysis of the gaps in the community needs so that we can create goals that are in line with the mission of the council as well as the DD Act. And these goals become the state plan that I referenced in the last slide. The DD Act ensures that individuals with developmental disabilities and their family members get to participate in the design of and have access to different community supports and services that are individualized. There's other forms of assistance that come along with that, but really the heart and the soul of the DD Act is to promote self-determination, independence, community integration, and inclusion in all facets of community life. And another really important piece of the DD Act is that we're offering these support services and education in culturally competent programs and different ways of informing and educating the public. Next slide, please. So the DD Act prescribes how councils can do the work that we do. And we have different areas that we're allowed to focus on. And those are here on the left side of the screen for you. So childcare, community supports, education and early intervention, employment, health, housing, recreation, transportation, and quality assurance, which the quality assurance also includes a self-advocacy piece. And then on the right side, there are different strategies that we can do to carry out the work to accomplish the focus areas on the left side. And some of those activities are public policy advocacy, creating different coalitions, building capacity, collaboration, and information sharing. Next slide, please. There are a number of ways that we can carry out the work. And oftentimes we'll fund grantees or contractors to pilot new service ideas or activities that, again, build capacity in our service systems that support people with developmental and intellectual disabilities. We don't provide long-term funding. We're kind of like Kickstarter money to get an idea off the ground. And part of what we're hopeful for is that grantees and contractors create a sustainability plan before they're funded, so we know how they plan to continue the work when council funding is gone. We also work to provide information and technical assistance to lawmakers, different agency representatives, and legislators. We provide funding to support individuals with developmental disabilities or their family members to participate on various advisory boards or to attend conferences to educate themselves and their communities and to just advocate on behalf of themselves or community in general. Council members and council staff participate in various work groups and task force, different coalitions that affect policymaking at the state level. One of the bigger components that we offer currently is providing leadership and advocacy training for both individuals with disabilities and their family members. And in a few minutes, I will show you some specific activities of what these strategies look like in action, specifically when we're talking about engaging diverse communities. Next slide, please. This project here was an effort to engage Spanish-speaking families. And pardon, I'm going to butcher the pronunciation of, I'm still working on my Spanish skills, but Hispanos Unidos de Tooele was a project that we worked with Utah State University to improve health access and just the general awareness of resources for Spanish-speaking Utahns in Tooele County. The project used the principles of asset-based community development And we use this method to provide outreach to people with disabilities and the Spanish-speaking population within Tooele County. Asset-based community development, or ABCD, is an approach that supports communities to identify existing assets and resources. It really focuses on what communities already have rather than focusing on what communities lack. It encourages people to work together to create different social changes and identify strategies to meet the needs of the community without using a deficit approach. To make this happen, we employed a community connector, and this person needed to be somebody that was a well-connected community member who could use contacts and connections to engage families from the Spanish-speaking community to come together and work to accomplish mutual goals. The connector is an important piece of the ABCD model because this person is not only aware of the community's assets, but can use those awarenesses to connect people to one another, to different organizations, or assets that can help build the community up to accomplish whatever goals that people in that community set out to achieve. The role of the community connector in this project was to contact individuals, different businesses and agencies, enroll faith-based communities to spread the word about building this organization of Spanish-speaking Tooele residents with disabilities that wanted more information about health access and information. We asked the community connector to provide outreach to different organizations and groups to help spread the word and to recruit new individuals to connect and identify different assets among individuals. We also wanted the connector to help people kind of problem solve so that they could participate through helping them figure out and coordinate transportation and identifying a meeting space or event venues that were accessible to everybody that was trying to participate, and helping to remove barriers that would prevent people from otherwise participating, like making sure that childcare or respite services, those kinds of things were available or at least coordinated by the community connector. And then the last important piece was to help the members that were participating in this group to find different resources to help the group with whatever they were working on, and to solicit donations that would help support the project when it was appropriate. Some of the events I'm talking about, they coordinated an event. They did it a couple of times, but this Tooele Latin Festival, and it was a really cool opportunity because there was a resource fair there that provided different resources, about different assistance programs or healthcare providers, Head Start, different education and recreation opportunities and all kinds of different resources in the community. And that was happening in the park at the same time as a festival that was bringing in local Hispanic music and dancing and food and different clothing, and it was a really cool experience, and it was coordinated by such a small group of people. There were probably 20 or so active members of the Hispanic community who came together to try to bring resources to other Spanish-speaking residents, and they hosted this event where over 900 Tooele residents turned up at the park on this summer afternoon and learned about different resources, but also learned a lot about Latin culture. And so it was a very rewarding event, and just shows what can happen when a community decides on what their goals are and really executes that using their assets and their connections. Some of the other outcomes of this particular project was that there was a increased participation and utilization of different civic events and services by Spanish-speaking residents because of the work that this population did in going in and meeting with local organizations and really building trust between the local services and resources and the residents in the community. There was again it's an apparent increased appreciation for diversity and culture, as demonstrated through the attendance at this Tooele Latin Festival. Like I said, over 900 people. And when we asked the Tooele, they have a culture and arts committee that kind of leads all of their local area events. And this is one of the highest attended events in their history, not just in a year, but ever. So it was a very well-attended event. And there were increased opportunities for learning for Spanish language community classes and events as a result of the leadership of this Hispanos Unidos, who went out to different organizations like the library, and there were some computer literacy classes and some English language classes that were all made possible because of the work of this core group of people. There was increased collaboration and partnerships with the local health department, mental health authorities, and healthcare clinics. They hosted events like CPR training and I'm losing the word, but the defibrillator and different things that were all provided in Spanish language for the residents. And then there were an increased availability of Spanish language resource materials because of translation services that were provided by different group members. So we had some really positive things that happened in Tooele County. Next slide, please. This is another project that's more recent, and we just finished the pilot year, but I'll share a little bit about this program. This is called Lideramos Juntos, and it is a leadership development program for Spanish-speaking adults with disabilities and their family members. So family members who have children with disabilities participated. This program was developed in partnership with the Idaho Council on Developmental Disabilities, as well as the Institute for Disability Research Policy and Practice at Utah State University. The entire program was developed in Spanish, rather than a lot of programs that we've used before or partnered with before are often developed in English language and then translated. That was not the case. So we were trying to really be culturally responsive and understanding of what community members needed and what it was that they were wanting to learn, and making sure that it was coming from their primary language. And to make sure that we were including all of that information from the community. There were several listening sessions and focus groups with Spanish-speaking members of the disability community to better understand unmet needs and just the areas that people wanted training and resources about. This feedback helped us to create a 5-session course that focused on various topics. They met over a weekend, 5 months in a row. I think we had a break in December, so not in a row, but pretty close. And we talked about the importance of early diagnosis and access to services, what rights people have and how to exercise those rights. We talked about family-centered practices and how to be an effective advocate. And like I said, this was the pilot year of the program, and we just wrapped up in September. So we're still working to evaluate the outcomes. But we did receive some really positive feedback from the people who participated. And generally, they expressed a better understanding and confidence in standing up for their rights and advocating in areas like work and school and in housing. They also appreciated having a group of peers who by the end became pretty good friends. I mean, they wanted to have a big party and dance together and spend time outside of the program. And I think people are going to maintain friendships. And so this peer network became more than that. And everyone expressed that they intended to take the resources and the knowledge that they gained to share with their individual networks and neighborhoods and communities. We're really excited by that, because we know that the participants in this program are now going to go serve as leaders in their communities and really bring this information that they gained to their sphere of influence, and they're going to build other leaders up as well. Next slide, please. This program was an engagement with the Navajo Nation in the southeastern part of Utah. This was in our last state plan, so you know, we're looking at probably 7 years ago now, but it was still a pretty valuable experience, and we learned some things that I'd like to share. So this was another project where we utilized the asset-based community development approach. And in this particular community, they identified that there was really a need to preserve language and culture. And there was a community center at one of the chapter houses in the area where people would gather for events already. And they decided that this would be a good location to meet their goals. And after getting together a number of times and really talking about what different things would be beneficial, and what was it that the goal of the community was to not only preserve language and to share culture, but to do it through food, right? They recognized that a good meal and preparing food and working the land was such a big part of the culture, and a community garden would really serve that need. So they had a lot of land there. If you've ever been to southeastern Utah, there's a lot of land. So they used the yard outside of this this cultural center to plant a community garden, and a second garden spread kind of organically by the students at Whitehorse High School, which was a local high school there. So it was a really positive experience, and people would come and they would volunteer and farm the land, or they would swap produce with one another, things that people had grown at this community garden. People would trade for, you know, produce that they had grown at home. It was an opportunity to get together. Youth were working with elders. They were hosting a lot of different potluck type things around different harvest times, and it was a pretty positive experience for everybody who participated. Another thing that came from this were a few different advocacy groups in local communities in the same area. So an advocacy group kind of popped up in Montezuma Creek, and another one in Monument Valley, that would help Indigenous people with disabilities gain advocacy skills and community connection. And again, they would meet in the chapter houses. So one group met in Aneth, and then another over in the Monument Valley area, and they would talk about different issues, and they would work together to find solutions. One of the things that they problem solved together was a community carpool to help with transportation, because again, it's a very vast open space and things are very far apart. So they worked together to figure out how to share transportation and rides to different things that were happening in the community. Next slide, please. All right, so we're going to take a little bit of time to share what was successful for us and some of the lessons that we learned from these different projects that we've engaged in over the years. And I would have to say that one of the #1 things that we've learned is that this asset-based community development approach has really been successful. It is so much more powerful and welcoming and successful when you decide you want to engage with a community and ask them what they want and need, and not decide before you get there what they want and need. It really works well because it's community driven and it's reliant on existing resources and assets. And one of the biggest assets of any community is the people, right? So identifying people and their talents and skills creates really great opportunities for success. One tool that we have used successfully many times to help people identify their strengths is what's called a personal capacity inventory. And simply put, we ask people to identify the gifts that they can give to their communities. in 3 broad categories. So this is the head, the heart, and the hands. And gifts of the head are things that a person knows, and that's something that they would enjoy talking about. So maybe I love books or animals or history, and I would want to share information with other people about those things. So that would be a gift of the head. Gifts of the hands are skills or things that a person knows how to do and wants to share. And this could be things like gardening or cooking or playing a sport. Gifts of the head are things that a person cares deeply about, right? What are you passionate about? I want to protect the environment. I want to make sure that kids are safe. I want to make sure that there's strong, opportunities for engagement in my community. Are we having farmers markets or craft fairs, or are there opportunities for people to participate? What are these things that I am passionate about? And those are gifts of the heart. And these are all ways that we connect with one another, is through these different gifts and skills. And when you help people identify what they can share, they feel empowered and they want to participate, and the strength of the group just really improves and helps you to reach the community goals. Another thing that we have found very useful is supporting and educating communities about inclusion. And when I'm talking about inclusion, generally we mean including people with disabilities, but really this is more of a universal approach. And this can be useful for people with limited English proficiency, or people who have limited reading ability. I mean, there's a lot of different people who benefit when you talk about inclusion in a universal way. So the first and most important step to this is making sure that you're involving people with different perspectives at all levels. And we're talking about planning, execution, and even when you're reviewing things after they've happened. And at every stage, making sure that you're including a diverse group of people who come with their own thoughts and values, and they can help identify potential problems and things to make those overcome those potential barriers, and just making things much more successful in the end. They can, including these diverse voices, can ensure that communities are inclusive places for all people. And maybe your organization expresses that you want to be welcoming and you want to attract underserved communities, but if you're not considerate of accessibility, you might not be as welcoming as you hope to be. So just making sure that you're thinking about this as much as possible, and just including as many diverse voices as possible. Considering steps you can take towards different types of accessibility, like physical, functional, and social accessibility, can help to create more inclusive environments. For example, when we're talking about physical accessibility, that's the built environment. And some questions to help you examine this might be to consider: is the meeting space on an accessible floor? Is the building easy to navigate? Is the public transportation available, and is it convenient? What are the meeting spaces like? Do restrooms offer necessary accommodations like accessible stalls and handrails? Does the physical environment have visual cues? So are there signs or symbols, arrows, those kinds of things? And so when you're trying to look at physical accessibility, taking a look at the physical space, and again, asking input from others, can help to overcome any potential barriers that you might encounter. When I'm talking about functional accessibility, I'm talking about programming and communication and those kinds of things, and making sure that communication and outreach is available in many formats has been a good lesson for us. Our present culture is so reliant on technology, and we want to make sure that we're sharing things on social platforms and putting them in our electronic newsletters and posting them on our websites, and those are all good, and they're very effective, but just remembering or being aware that not everybody has access to technology or the understanding of how to use it, and using other approaches that would be able to reach people that you might not be reaching but want to, right? So using paper flyers, or setting up town meetings, or just different in-person get-togethers These are different strategies and approaches that have been useful and are reaching people that you might not otherwise be if you're just limiting yourself to technology in your outreach strategies. And then another way that communication can be improved is through clear and concise language, and if possible, use images and symbols. There's a lot of software programs that we work with every day, like Adobe and Microsoft products that have built-in accessibility features. Taking the time to learn how to use those and actually using them it can be very simple and a cost-effective way to resolve potential accessibility or communication issues. So take some time to learn about those. I mean, you're already paying for those software programs anyway, you might as well maximize them. If you're trying to look at your programming to check for accessibility or to think about it in a more broad way, some questions that can help you to examine this are, considering who you're presenting at your meetings and who's being given the opportunity to share their thoughts or objectives. Does your agenda or schedule represent the diverse group of people who you're hoping to attract, or who is planning to be in attendance? Who was involved in the planning, who reviewed the meeting's content or the event agenda? Are people stereotypically assigned to present about certain topics? Are meetings held at certain times, and who's not able to attend based on those hours or schedules? And are individuals who want to make comments being given adequate time to speak? So those are some things you can think about when you're looking at the functional accessibility. And then last in this area of accessibility is the social piece. And it's the most difficult to address by far because oftentimes these are far-reaching and deeply rooted historical beliefs and behaviors that people hold. And fortunately, small steps like creating inclusive social environments at meetings and events and workplaces really do make strong impacts on the individuals who are participating and start to shift the culture and the beliefs around diversity and people being included. And if you work to establish kind of a code of conduct that all meeting attendees, or that's what's required of us to participate, and you enforce that, or allowing people, each person the opportunity to talk at an event if there's time for everybody to be sharing their thoughts or ideas, encouraging everybody to participate demonstrates that your meeting or your event, your culture in general, really welcomes and values all participants. So this social piece is really the hardest, but it's also one of the more important. So just making sure that you're actively including people and encouraging all voices to be heard and to participate with meaning, right? Okay, so I'm going to shift here to partnerships and relationships. And we're a relatively small organization, so working with other groups or organizations or individuals who have similar goals and working together has been a very, very good strategy for us. So identify who has similar interests and goals and spend your time building relationships with those partners. And I think that you'll have a very good outcome and strong partnerships, and you'll be able to maximize the amount of effort and outcomes that you get from whatever that relationship or goal is. And the last that I wanted to note is having a dedicated staff person or volunteer has yielded the best outcomes in our experience. Next slide, please. So obviously we had some great success, but there's still a lot of areas needing improvement. I think obviously I stuck it in the wrong order in that sentence. What I mean to say is there's obviously still areas needing improvement. in all communities that we have engaged, there is a need to improve the attitudes and the feelings or negative stigma about people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. Many people with disabilities and their family members have expressed feelings of isolation or emotional stress because they feel that their community doesn't understand, or they hold opinions that people with disabilities don't matter, or and there's a number of things and reasons that people have expressed these feelings. And generally, we as a society need to work to change that and help to dispel negative myths about people with disabilities, and really help communities and society understand all of the gifts and value and benefits and contributions that people with disabilities bring. When working with different communities in the examples that I shared today, specifically in the Hispanic and tribal communities, supporting people to connect with others in similar situations would be very valuable to enhance a sense of community, and I think would help to overcome some of those feelings of isolation and improve a sense of belonging. So some peer support is a really important component that is needed, and I think we could make a lot more effort in that area. Friendship is huge, and I know there are a lot of pockets of work being done to identify and support people to connect and to feel this sense of peer and community and sense of belonging, but there are a lot of people who still feel disconnected and lack resources. Another area that we've noted a need for improvement, and I'm sure that you've heard about every single time you come to a community of practice event, is the communication as far as language access, whether resources or material are not available in a person's native language, or there's not reliable interpretation or translation services, or someone has limited English proficiency and there's just no supports. We talked earlier about technology access, and particularly in our work with the Navajo Nation, there are many places where there's no internet service or phone coverage. So accessing, just communicating with people in those ways is sometimes very challenging for both organizations and the people who live there, more frustrating for the people who live in those communities. Or people don't have access to smartphones, or they don't have the training or the understanding how to use them. So anyway, communication could use a lot of improvements in many ways. And then the last area I would like to just draw some attention to is sustainability. We've seen some really great things flourish in communities, but helping a community to establish a sustainability plan for after your organization is no longer supporting or participating in that effort is so important, because you don't want it to fizzle, right? On the last slide, I talked about the value of having a dedicated staff person or a volunteer, and that's not always possible, and I understand that. But if it is, you really have a lot greater progress because somebody is putting a lot of time and focused energy into whatever that community goal is. But oftentimes when that person leaves the effort, the momentum can fizzle, and that can be very frustrating for the community who is left behind without this identified leader. So trying to figure out how to keep the momentum going after your organization steps back is something I think we need to work on, some successful strategies that people can share with one another. Next slide, please. All right, I'm almost out of time, but I just wanted to make sure that everybody knew how to connect with us if this was something that you were interested in. Again, our focus is people with intellectual and developmental disabilities and their family members. But we have a lot of different goals, and we love to connect. Like I said, we're small, and we really rely on collaboration and partnerships, and we're always looking for ways to connect and collaborate with other organizations that are in alignment with our goals. And we have our website shares all of our training and programs that we're working on right now. If you want to reach out to us, our email address is there, and there's our website. We recruit annually for council membership, so if you're interested in serving on our board, there's always an opportunity for that as well. And as far as our trainings and programs go, typically most of the things we offer are free, and you don't have to be a council member to participate in any of our trainings or programs. So we do encourage you to connect with us by either in partnership or participating in one of our programs or trainings. And next slide, please. That's my contact information if you would like to contact me directly. And if you have time at your convenience, that little QR code is just a little survey that helps us as an organization provide better information in the future. So with that, I will stop and turn the time back over to Eduardo.
Thank you so much, Libby. A great presentation. But now, as part of the community of practice, we want to expand this conversation. So it is open for questions and answers. I think the presentation gave us a lot of opportunity to reflect in many approaches and many work that you have been developing. So yeah, let's expand this conversation.
Libby, I just want to say thank you for this excellent presentation. And I couldn't help but think throughout your entire presentation how you and your organization are always people first, making access people first, making people their comfort level people first. And I commend you. I mean, it seems like that's what we all are trying to do, but it's not always the way it happens. So thank you very much. That was a really nice presentation. A great reminder to all of us that doing good starts with thinking of the person first. So thank you.
Thank you, Randy.
Well, I'm gonna take the advantage that of silence. Great learnings and great lessons that you share with us. Just wondering, what are the next steps that you envision? What is coming?
Well, we're still continuing our efforts in supporting Spanish-speaking community members. I think our next big hurdle is going to be more on the policy related side. And there, without getting too, I don't even know, emotional, I suppose. There are a lot of things that we're facing both in Utah and nationally that are making it harder and harder to be a person who is outside of the norm, and making sure that policy and language access and resources are still available to everyone who lives in this wonderful country and this wonderful state is really important. And helping people to understand and to fight for their rights and the access that they are entitled to is going to be very important to us in the next couple of years. So we're going to work on policy.
Thank you. Thank you, Libby, for sharing and for your leadership. We do appreciate a lot. I'm just going to read some notes from the chat. Randy says Julia says that thank you, Libby. Always good to hear what the UDDC is doing. Marla is saying great presentation and accomplishment. Good luck with the policy and advocacy aspects. And I think, Marla, you are going to say something.
I was, and I have a couple of questions that you have done such great things, it sounds like, and I love to hear the results that come in that garden in the southern area of Utah and the things that happen in Arizona. In our up to 3 early intervention program, we're being more aware, I think, as a program of what we can do to be more inclusive, especially for our families who need their services in Spanish or who come, from maybe new to this country or something like that. I wonder if you have suggestions for a small organization. We just cover 3 counties in northern Utah of ways you would say to be aware of what our families need, or, you mentioned some things to just think about who we might not have included at the table or some of these things. What other suggestions would you have?
So we've used a couple of free tools that have been developed not only in the asset-based community development toolkit, but there's a couple of other approaches. Results-based accountability also uses community-driven approaches. But what I'm trying to say, and I'm not getting to, is there are a lot of different free tools that can help you assess who is your community, right? Like a partner mapping, if you will. What different organizations and institutions are around us, schools, universities, boys and girls clubs, libraries, who is in our local community, and what other organizations and programs might serve the same population as us, and how can we partner with those groups to either spread information about our program or to work together, right? Perhaps you need some information translated and you don't have the budget or the staff to be able to do that, but the library, they do, right? And they'll be able to help you with that kind of thing. So I think this partner mapping tool has been very helpful and successful for us in identifying who is in our network that we didn't even think about. And the tool kind of prompts you to think outside of your normal frame of reference. So I would encourage using some of those partner mapping tools.
Thank you very much.
I had a quick question.
Go ahead, Adri.
You mentioned in the presentation that you were thinking about doing some transportation services in southern Utah. How far has that gone? What are you guys thinking? Did you guys get any ideas? Because that's a really good idea. I love that idea.
Yeah, so the carpool idea, it came from a couple of community members in the Bluff area, and they all recognized that they had people in their homes that needed to go similar places, and they worked together to coordinate a carpool schedule that seemed to meet everybody's needs. So it wasn't any kind of formal effort on our part as the council. We just helped to connect those individuals and to help get their idea into motion and to keep them, to help them organize their ideas. But that's something different than work that we're planning to do in the future as a council. We have done quite a few different transportation needs assessments in different areas, including the southeastern part of the state, to ask communities what their transportation or lack of transportation is in those areas, and what they would like to see first, because transportation is obviously a huge issue in a lot of different communities. And our first step, our next step after evaluating that information is trying to identify some things that we can do simply, and those might just be letting the city council in that area know that people who live there want the snow removed from the sidewalks, right? Like that might be a small step, but it's going to be a big improvement in that community. So, and then as far as like, when we think of traditional transportation, like buses and those kinds of things, we'll make sure that we're working with transportation authorities in those areas to understand what people have said they want to see in those areas. So two major things: making sure that the right people to make change and decisions are aware of the needs of the community and the wants of the community, and making sure that improvements that can be made simply, that we're tackling those first. Because once we get the ball rolling, people feel encouraged to keep pushing and to keep making improvements in the community.
Okay, thank you.
Any other question you might have for Libby? We still have a few minutes, and yeah, I think it's a great opportunity to get so much insights of the work that has been developed from a leader in the field. Well, I'm going to take advantage as well. One of the questions that I had prepared is, are there resources or opportunities that people with disabilities from diverse multicultural backgrounds should be aware of?
Well, so I guess in what regard? Just
In any opportunity that they can take of in their daily life that they have, because it is an additional layer that sometimes need to be considered. Those factors that I was saying before, people from remote or rural areas, or people from older ages, or people from different cultural background. Are there any opportunities that you can see that they are not taking advantage of resources that are available for some of those individuals or even communities yeah.
yeah, thank you. this is my personal observation, but I think a lot of the people that I've engaged with and had conversations with, a lot of the issues or barriers that they're facing is that they're not aware of what their rights are in that particular area, whether it be at work or with their landlord or supporting their child at school. And um, every school district has a language access policy and what the students' expectations are and parent and student rights and just uh, for example, if we're talking about education, taking some time to understand what your rights are and then finding some support or somebody who can help you feel courageous enough to exercise your rights. So I think one simple step that we can take is to better understand what our rights are and then empower each other to exercise those rights.
Thank you. Thank you, Libby. And I think Mindy shared with us some questions that we would like for all the participants to answer. But it doesn't mean that we still have a few minutes to hear any final thoughts, Libby, that you would like to share with us, with this audience.
Just that I appreciate you all coming and I'm glad to be a part of this community of practice. And I feel encouraged by the organizations and the people that I see here today. And I know that we will continue to improve. We're going to continue to improve and to empower each other and to really make life as good as it can be for as many people as we can in the work that we do and the connections that we have. And anyway, thank you. I have a lot of gratitude for this effort and for all of you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Libby. I think we have learned a lot from you today, and I hope that we are going to keep learning because, you know, as one of your slide was saying, sustainability is very important. So I think it takes time and the effort of many of us together. So yeah, at work is still ahead, and we need to keep working. I think we keep working together, even you know, more powerful for making those changes that we potentially need. Thank you again. Great presentation. A lot of learnings from us. And Mindy, you always have the last minute questions or comments.
Yeah, thank you. I just want to echo what has been said. I'm so grateful for everybody joining us today, for the fruitful discussion we've had. I'm grateful to Libby for sharing so much of the great things that they are doing at the UDDC and also some things to think about as far as future endeavors and what we can still continue to improve in general as a society. This was really thought-provoking. If anybody who is on the meeting with us is on X, I have been posting some quotes and points from this meeting there. So if you want to join us there and do some review of today's meeting, we would love to have you follow us there and join us. We also have an in-person conference coming up this next year. So that's something really exciting to look forward to, especially if you are already interested in these topics that we've been talking about. More details to come, so watch for emails from us about that in the next couple of months. But yeah, I just want to share my appreciation for everybody who is answering the survey questions too. And I think that's everything. If anybody else has any last minute questions or comments, you're welcome to unmute yourself and chat, or you can put it in the chat. But I'm just grateful for you all. Thank you for spending some time with us today.
Well, in my culture, we always say that nobody wanna leave it because we are still wanna stay together. And that's true. I do appreciate everybody's participation. You have a great afternoon. Bye, everybody.